TIL There is an inverse correlation between the amount of money spent on a wedding, and how long the marriage lasts. The more people spend on the ceremony, the more likely the couple will get divorced. There are some people that want a wedding more than they want to be married. Eloped in a courthouse and still divorced. Checkmate. I saw this play out with some co-workers once. It was the most lavish wedding reception I'd ever been to, different cultures and customs that I wasn't familiar with up until then. I think the planning took 2 years and they'd been dating for 9, since high school, and he left her 13 months later. I assume much of it was caused by family pressures to marry though. 30 plus years. You just cracked my code name. Edit, thank you for the silver. Reading over the study, it only included about 3,000 people and their cut-off for highest category for wedding expense was $20,000. That's a huge amount of weddings ranging from $20K to infinity. The average wedding in 2014, when the study was conducted, was $31K. So the national average is $11K over what the study considers the highest category. I think this study has a lot of holes. I'm no expert, so if someone wants to correct me, please do. People who are bad with money get divorced more frequently. Long story short as I can make it. Wife started dating me when I was a janitor at a plasma center. Told her the only promise I know I can keep is that our life together would never be boring. Got a job shortly thereafter as a letter carrier. 10 years later we got married in Eileen Donan Castle in the Scottish Highlands. Actually cost was about $350 US in 1995, and spent the next 30 days driving around the country staying at B&Bs. Came back home to Minneapolis and threw a reception at the old railroad depot in St. Paul, Minnesota. Total cost of the honeymoon and reception was around $25,000, which was the money for retirement I made while working as a letter carrier. Blew the whole wad for her, since she took a chance on me. Gave her the fairytale wedding that you only read about. Fast forward a few years, we buy a sailboat in the BVIs and go down every winter to sail and work on fixing the boat up. We would quit our jobs in the winter and find new ones in the spring. She bartended and I worked security gigs. Got into our late 50s and it was getting harder for her to find new gigs. Hurricane Maria solved that problem and took our beloved sailboat out into the sea. No regrets though, we spent around 13 years living that adventure. Currently, I'm working summers at a brewery and she's a butcher at Whole Foods. We live in a van, Winnebago Travato Class B RV, the other 7 to 8 months out of the year traveling out west disperse camping/boondocking. Don't marry the person you can live with, marry the person you can't live without. I feel like this needs to be restated relative to the initial wealth of the couple. People who can afford an expensive wedding can afford divorces, too. Divorce is expensive, and many married couples stay together because they can't afford divorce. $300 at a wedding chapel in Vegas, with complimentary limo service, with a limo completely covered in advertisements, over 17 years ago, and we're still going strong. We took the money we would have spent on the wedding and took a 5-week honeymoon in Europe. One of the best decisions we've made. If you spend zero and never get married, you most definitely can't get divorced. Grinning face. People with money are the ones having the expensive weddings. People with money don't need to stay together if it doesn't work out. They can afford to go their separate ways. This doesn't apply for a country where grand weddings are the norm and divorce is a taboo. India. I expected a ton of humble bragging in the comments about everyone's cheap and virtuous and sincere weddings, and I was not disappointed. Now if I had to guess, this has more to do with the fact that people who are from families with enough money or make enough money to support themselves independently are more likely to be unafraid to leave someone because they can hack it on their own finances instead of relying on two incomes. Meanwhile, poor people can't afford to divorce because they need to split rent, car payment, child care, etc. Just a guess. So that's why courthouse weddings last so long. Husband and I have been married for almost 5 years when it became legal nationwide in the States, but we have been together for 19 years. This probably has more to do with lower income people wanting, or being capable, of divorcing less than saying anything about the nature of love, I would wager. I wonder if this accounts for the fact that the more money you have, the easier a divorce is. Interesting. I think there may be a lot of factors at play here. But I think this speaks volumes on the topic of materialism. I would imagine that a lot of couples say things like, as long as we have each other, we'll be happy. If they mean it and it is true for both partners, they may be willing to deal with more obstacles. If one or both partners feel that they need more expensive arrangements, whether it be to prove something to themselves or others or for any other reason, then they may be putting appearances or material experiences higher on their priority of values. In this case, a lack of material wealth or financial stability may be a deal breaker for the relationship. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I believe that finances are still the number one disagreement between couples. For the record, I believe it is okay if a marriage doesn't last a lifetime, but if you intend it to, consider the fact that a lot of things will change and grow over time. Consider the fact that you will be different people in 10, 20, and 30 years down the road. And be honest about your values and expectations with each other. I am in no way, shape, or form a professional, just adding my thoughts. Interesting info. High expectations. My wife and I were engaged for 2 years, planned a big wedding and honeymoon. She got pregnant and didn't have health insurance, America pre-Obamacare. So we bought $50 rings from an Irish shop, got married by my high school principal's reverend husband, had a quick reception at a local restaurant with an Elvis cutout in the window, spent a night at a nice hotel nearby, then a weekend at another hotel. Total expenses, about $1,500. Fast forward to 13 years later, we've got 4 kids, happy and content. We'll get around to the honeymoon eventually, but we've had plenty of nice vacations with her parents and our kids. The day is a big event, but it doesn't matter as much as what comes next. I'm an exception. 300 plus guests and probably close to $75,000 spent in 1990. Still blissfully happy. I think it may be a false equivalency, because the more the couple makes, income-wise, the more likely they will get divorced as well, almost directly, and people who make more can afford to pay more. I think income is the actual factor. My wife and I married in Las Vegas at the Tropicana Chapel. Both pretty broke. Been married for 23 years. I spent a total of $500 on my wife and I's wedding. Her side of the family absolutely hated us being together. I paid for her dress, the cake, made the arrangements, booked the church, sent out invitations, pretty much everything short of helping my wife get ready the day of our wedding. We will be together 20 years this year. Everybody eventually warmed up to us being together, but we did start off with nothing but our love, and we still have it. This is happening with my Sil right now. She and her husband spent something like $60,000 on their wedding, and they've already been on 3 breaks where they slept with other people. And it's only their first year of marriage. My wife and I literally had a conversation about this same exact topic when her sister started rattling off how much everything was going to cost. $398K later, I can say this is accurate. So glad I haven't spent any money. Still not divorced. Pretty sure it's because some people get married for the pomp and circumstance, while people who are happy to spend less on a wedding are more likely to actually be in love.